it happens to be a special case where you can make determinate predictions.
Right.
And therefore it resembles natural science.
Right.
Right? So that's where you come in, because in that special case, that's the old theory, is a special case. So in that sense, you are right. But then, according to the theory of reflexivity, you can only make determinate predictions in a special case where people behave rationally, which actually is not realistic, but it is a special case. Right? And everywhere else, you actually cannot have a single a prediction because the future is not a single event. It's a range of events that can emerge depending on the biases and actions of the participants. So therefore, if the future itself is indeterminate, then to have any kind of determinate prediction, it has to be a false prediction.
Black shells have been shown not to describe option prices very well. A lot of people out in the street still use it, and even at the fixed income houses, Freddie Mac, Henry, they get a request to price an exotic derivative. The first thing they do, he got about 1 minute to do it. He uses the simplest method tools, which is black shells. Gives the price, please be weighted as we do now. Alright? So yeah, I mean, there are rejected theories which are still used for this power of simplicity or tradition.
And it's very difficult, in talking about far from equilibrium conditions, I'm using the term equilibrium. So, I mean, it's difficult to describe the absence of equilibrium without referring to it. So that's part of it. But I just want to react to what you said earlier, because, you see, Popper, as Noturno has found out to his chagrin, is not widely accepted in philosophical circles.
I'm also quite well aware of that.
Huh?
I am also extremely well aware that he's
Right.
not widely accepted.
And I, one of the ideas that Popper put forward, which I believe to have sort of been rejected by the philosophers of science, that he said that the value of a theory is to be measured by or indicated by the severity of the tests to which it is subjected. And if it survives those tests, then it's a more valuable theory than
Better
it would.
tested.
Pardon?
Better tested.
It's better.
Better tested. Better corroborated.
Right. So it's a more valuable theory. Am I right?
Better tested. Yeah.
Yeah.
It survived the tests.
Yeah.
Better tested, but you cannot say it's true theory or anything,
No,
because you can never construct a test
and you
that
argue that
confirms
So
We
it.
couldn't even say it's
this is
confirmed.
kind of, from what I've heard, that philosophers of science, this is nonsense, because you can't measure the severity of a test, right? This is one of the ideas that are for which Popper is criticized.
Right.
Am I right? Now, I actually, being the naive guy that I am, I actually accepted this idea, and I was guided by it in my investment activities. And there was a case, a company called Mortgage Guarantee Insurance Corporation, or MAGIC, appropriately called MAGIC. And in the California real estate crash of 1960, whatever it was, the stock was down to practically nothing, because it was widely believed that having insured mortgages in a market that is now in a crash, the company is going to go broke. So it was selling at practically, bankruptcy prospect. And I studied it, and I came to a conclusion that they will not go broke. So my thesis was in a sharp perception. So I bought the stock. And my thesis happened to be correct. And the stock went up fivefold. So here was, to me, an example of a severity of the testing that made the thesis more valuable. So this, to me, that was a corroboration of Popper's idea. But of course, that's not accepted by the philosophers of science as corroboration. But therefore, I'm a greater believer in Popper's theory than the philosophers.
We'll talk about World 3 more.
Right?
We'll talk more about World 3.
We'll give the last word to Paul because we have another meeting to get to.
George, I did a little change in direction here, but I wanted to tap into your globalism just a little bit and ask you about something we like to discuss in some of my classes is the end of the communism and socialist era, and whether or not, in fact, what's happening is that in the world we're inventing new kinds of capitalism. Whether or not we have a Chinese kind of capitalism, a kind of Indian capitalism, a Japanese kind of capitalism. Are we in a stage where capitalism and all this kind of economic theory about how markets work is really going to be changed by the fact that we have such different players in this thing called capitalism, such that they're going to invent it, and we are in a stage of different capitalisms in competition with one another?
Like we've got different players playing with different structures, but they're competing with each other in the global market. And so I'm not sure that those are different capitalisms. These are different capitalists or different social organizations, different economies competing with each other, learning from each other. They come from different places. If you think of where the Japanese come from, right? But then they came to the West, they came to America, and they picked up a lot of information, then they adapted it. So it's different people competing, and that, I think, is actually sort of the market economy. And that's you do have one global market economy now. There are some people who stay out of it, and they don't do so well.